Blog Talk Radio.
Here we go with the main event of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen in attendance, boxing fans joining us around the world. It's time for the bout you've all been waiting for. Finally, it is showtime.
Here, man, we dedicate our life to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We have attitude, we rooting, and we go into that fight just to land on the line.
Boxing fans, this is the Debacle Radio podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carlson, and I'll tell you what, I took a big gulp of water before the show started, and it went down the wrong pipe. I think I did that not too long ago, but I'm okay. Tuesday night, we are back. The Debacle Radio has a variety of things to talk about, of course, in and outside of the ring. We're going to start with recap with Terrence Crawford's fourth round knockout of Brook. He was losing the fight early, which is not that big of a surprise if you watch Crawford's fight, but he adjusted, really just timed him with a great shot, and it turned the fight. Now, as far as the undercard, the Franco Maloney fight, wow, that was a debacle. It's like 26 minutes to figure out what the hell happened. And by the way, we have instant replay. You know what I mean? It's just like, what the hell was that all about? So we're going to get into a variety of that stuff when it comes to the ring. We'll talk a little bit about the other stuff, Katie Taylor and some of that DAZN card, the FS1 card, but we're going to focus in on Crawford and Brook. And also, obviously, we know that there were some issues during the week with Crawford and Bob talking a little bit. We found out now when his actual contract is up. And Bob had some choice words, kind of like kicking you in the ass as you leave. You know what I mean? Like, take that with you. He's also, Bob Arum, talking about a Pacquiao fight for maybe the fourth or fifth time in the last couple of years. Is he bluffing? Is this a true thing? Because even the Crawford's, side is pretty like, I don't know. We talked about Wilder and the cried wolf type thing, the boy who cried wolf. That was that a book? I think it was. Well, at some point he's got to deliver. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as far as that goes. We'll read you the quotes, because they were freaking intense, some of the stuff he said after. But what is next for Crawford? We'll talk about that. Brook sounds like he's on the verge of retiring more than likely. I guess I can't blame him. And then, recently, a couple hours ago, Canelo Alvarez, it was rumored that he was close to being done with a fight for Callum Smith, and he is going to fight him officially. December 19th on DAZN. Tell me Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions aren't kicking themselves to see him go back to DAZN, at least for one fight. We'll talk a little bit of detail about some rumors of the offer the PBC gave to him. This obviously helps DAZN launch in the UK with a UK fighter. Sure, it's, in the middle of the night, but hey, it's pretty damn good. So we'll talk about a variety of stuff. Also, Tyson Fury now all of a sudden can't fight in December, but that's why he didn't want to fight Wilder, because the Wilder fight would maybe be January, February. Now he's talking about that's when I'm coming back. And to make matters worse, or confusing anyway, he's going to fight in the States. So funky how that kind of turned things around. Now he's talking about, hey, man, I'll be back February and March. I thought you said you wanted to fight, though. Did you think that was going to be tough to be made? But anyway, we'll preview a little bit of the fight weekend. It's a pretty calm fight weekend coming up. But before we get into this, if this is your first time listening to the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. It streams live at Archives. It's basically the headquarters. It's boxing heavy, but we do have football and basketball for those who care about that. You don't have to go to Blog Talk, though, and Rope-A-Dope and download the show right there. Listen to the browse. You can find the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast platform on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn, Stitcher, really almost across the board. We're also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network, which can be found everywhere, including Spotify. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com. It's football, it's boxing, it's baseball, it's basketball, it's everything in between. And one more thing before we get into Crawford's big knockout. No matter what you think of Kell Brook, where he's at in his career, it still is he did his job, right? But anyway, I'm over here getting into the first recap. But anyway, if you're thinking about cutting the cord, or you have, maybe you're not quite happy, I got something for you. It's called AT&T TV Now. It's live streaming cable. They have the 7-day free trial. There's no annual contracts. The plan starts as low as $55 a month. You can stream it anywhere. They have the cloud DVR. And just for signing up, you get a 30-day free trial of HBO Max. And if you sign up for the Max package of the AT&T TV Now, that includes HBO Max plus a free month of Showtime. And there's still some good fights coming up on Showtime. That's regularly $11 a month, just so you know, Showtime on this platform. AT&T TV Now, like I said, live streaming cable. I actually had to change part of the title. I had to put in Canelo somewhere in there. I was wondering if we were going to get a late in the week announcement. Sounded like for a second we were going to get that late last week, but it didn't go down. Coppinger and others were talking about Caleb Plant. I still was kind of wondering how that was going to work on that short time frame, especially on pay-per-view when you are doing a pay-per-view December 5th. December 19th was going to work for, ESPN and Fox for the Wilder Fury trilogy. So I always kind of scratched my head and wondered how that's going to go. So we'll get into that in a second. I do think that this is a big deal. A lot of people think, he's with DAZN again. Well, he's a free agent. So he can choose wherever the hell he wants. Maybe he will just go fight by fight. There was an offer by the PBC that was floated out there. But let's start in the ring, shall we? Terrence Crawford, Kell Brook. I gave Brook the first 2 rounds. I think that's fairly easy. A lot of it was the jab. It was landing well. He was using timing. Even in the first round, Crawford landed a nice late right hand, but there was a left hook late from Brook, and also, like I said, the jab. And he just was like, they were both jabbing, but he was jabbing really cleanly. He added an uppercut in the second round. I think Crawford tried to throw a nice uppercut. I don't know if it landed in the second round, but it seemed like it. But overall, he was kind of just getting beat to the punch. Like I said, they both talked in the locker room. He said, man, that timing took me a while. And there was a couple of times where it looked like he thought he had his timing, Crawford, and then he got popped in the face. So he was losing those first 2 rounds. The third round was close. Could you have gave it to Crawford? Yeah, I think so. But you could have maybe gave it to Brook. Maybe you give it 10-10. Brook had his jab, and he landed left hooks. There was a late right hand, too. Very close round, but jab plus the uppercut. And I think it landed maybe twice in that round for Crawford. And he also came out with southpaw. And so you could kind of see, obviously, that did something. I think, 60 seconds into that round, there was a nice left hook. So I gave Crawford the round, but it was close enough that you could make the argument the other way, I thought. And then, let's see, my notes say about 50 seconds into the round, just like a jab, like it looked like a jab out of the southpaw stance with the right hand, but it was almost like a hook or like a maybe, I don't know. He just caught him with a perfect shot, and Kell Brook didn't see it coming. You could see when he landed that was the case, because he was kind of coming forward a little bit, and he wasn't balanced quite ready to get hit with a punch, and he went across the ring, flew into the ropes, almost maybe not almost flew outside the ropes, but I mean he needed the ropes. Let's put it that way. And they called, of course, a knockdown. Then on the second one, he got hit with a couple of clean shots sitting right on the rope, and he just wasn't doing anything except getting hit. And so they called it. TKO, stop it, just over. And so it was very abrupt. You could have said that he lost 3 rounds, but at least 2 of them, talking about Crawford. And I was impressed how he turned it around. Like I said, you could kind of see in the 3rd round he was starting to find something, especially with that uppercut. But, man, did he freaking straighten things out very quickly. We've seen this time and time again throughout his career. The first 3-4 rounds, he gets hit more than you think he should. And then, boom. Is he this superb elite defender? No, he's not. But he makes the adjustments. And I really don't care what, it's not even about shape. Obviously, he had a pretty good camp just looking at his body, but when you saw his face and the close-up in those interviews, it didn't look great. But I didn't think he'd look just phenomenal on the scale per se, especially in the face. He looked drawn pretty well out in that. But, it is what it is. He looked kind of tired. He looked a little faded in that interview. And you look at Crawford, he looked good. But we all know that was the problem. We didn't know. We didn't know if the eye would hold up. I guess we didn't get enough rounds there to see. But also we didn't know. He no matter what because in the beginning, you got company. Well, I'm not talking about the Bible or anything. In the beginning, even though that was the beginning, but we won't go there. You got Bradley in the beginning of it, and I understand the broadcast teams. I got to say this over and over again. I understand they're going to be, all of them are pretty biased, but the whole bringing down other fighters, like when he said nobody at 140 is going to want to fight Pedraza now, it's like, dude, that's just not true. At least make it about Crawford and Spence or something like that. But they're talking about audible bones and all that, but then he's just but he's a refreshed, he's refreshed. Tessitore said that before the opening bell. He talked about the orbital bones and all of a sudden, but he's refreshed, and then you got Bradley piling in saying, I think he's taken on a better Kell Brook. This is better. He was talking to Andre Ward and Tess. This is better. This is a better Kell Brook than Spence even had, because remember, he was coming off the Golovkin loss. He's got 3 in a row. He's got confidence. He's refreshed. He's a better version, and that's just, come on, dude. We don't know that till we see him in the ring, but to sit there and say because he won some fights, well, he won 3 fights. None of them were in the top 10 at a deep division, by the way. And it was at 154. He hadn't made the weight in 3.5 years, so it's it gets a little old. I get it. You're going to be biased. Somebody's talking in your ear and telling you what not to say or stay away from that or whatever, or talk, highlight that or whatever. But to be a company man, cool. But to be like a killer, like a hired assassin for him, and you were a fighter, I mean, that's what bugs me about Bradley. And I liked him. A lot of people didn't like him. I liked him as a fighter. I'm not saying a little roughhouse and all that. Well, a little bit more. But I'll tell you what, when that headbutt stuff came up, that was his expertise. Am I lying? I'm not. Anyway, also like Tessitore saying, take your $2 million with you and shove it. That type of thing. It was like, you're kind of cheapening. Did he just show up for the money then? You're almost cheapening Crawford's win. It was kind of weird. But, Bob Arum doing the normal, we can have Spence and Garcia on the same night. Spence is ducking him after saying basically the opposite during fight week. But then, really highlighting Pac and Crawford next. But as far as, like I said, what do you think about Brook? I understand what people are saying when he got caught with a clean punch. And here's the thing. Some people say, oh, he didn't try after that. Well, I understand what you're saying because we saw him still wanting to fight, being hurt and injured with Golovkin and Spence. He held up the big punches, and he still wanted to fight. And he just showed more oomph than he did in this fight once adversity hit him. I get that. I do get that. But let's not act like that punch wasn't a clean-ass punch that shook his ass up, because you saw he didn't see it for one. He saw, he twisted that neck really well. You could see, Brook kind of fought it with the ref, like looking at him, and then he didn't really fight it much more. So, if you thought the stoppage was bad, okay, that's your opinion. Everyone's, got one. But it didn't look like he wanted much more. And I'm not going to sit here and do what Bradley did and act like this means more than it did. But in the same breath, I'm not going to sit here and downgrade the win, I thought it was, hey, if you say he was spent and he shot before this fight, and he was anywhere from like a 7-1 to 10-1 underdog, cool. Well, look how Crawford took care of him. So if he was spent and not at his best, okay, well, Crawford, took him on 4 rounds too. So I still think you got to give credit because he did his job. He was on the job. So, and it was funny to hear them kind of talk back and forth. He's like, Kell Brook's like, yeah, your timing's, I told you I got good timing. And he's like, I hit harder than you think. He's like, yeah, you had pop, but it was that timing that got me. And that's kind of what was the difference. So kudos to Terrence Crawford. Like I said, no matter where you thought Kell Brook was, he took care of business, and that's something you cannot take away from Terrence Bud Crawford. Now, moving on, as far as the dilemma going on. Well, we actually have a debacle that we'll talk about. The delay debacle, I'm calling it. We'll talk about that next with that fucking – only boxing can fuck up replay that bad. I understand we still don't totally know what a catch is in the NFL. We're getting there, but we're still not quite there. But this was just despicable. But anyway, the post-fight interview was just awkward. To an extent, you could see the bad vibes going on. They're now talking, hey, we need Spencer Crawford, and that's what Bob's saying, and that's what Terrence is saying. The lawyers got involved. We now know with them sending letters and getting the extra. It sounds like they got an extra $1 million. If you don't deliver this fight, you got to give us $1 million more, that type of thing. So, it is what it is. Obviously, we now know he said a couple of months. Crawford did in that interview with Brian Custer on his podcast. Shouts out to him. He's gotten a lot of great interviews. He's talking about, Crawford. He said that I have a few months or a year. Well, now we know October is next year, 2021. That's when his deal is up, and they keep saying that they had the Pacquiao fight. They even brought up numbers to Coppinger at the Athletic, talking about 23.5 or 23.8. 23 mil, and then he'd get like 8 or 10, or he was actually in negotiating. I don't know exactly if those are their exact numbers or if they're just feeding it right to Bob. I don't know what to believe, because you talk to Eddie Hearn and Mikey Garcia, and they look like they had the fast track to him. But as it turns out, I guess, according to Bob anyway, he said that we had this thing done. It was just for COVID. Well, if that's the case, then this summer they should be able to make a fight. It shouldn't be a problem. I did notice, though, I just listened to an interview with Eddie Hearn, and they went around that Crawford-Bob beef and just that type of stuff. And they didn't ask him a question. What do you know? IFL being soft on him. And by the way, he does answer a lot of tough questions, but Eddie does. But he didn't touch that. And I thought, man, if you had Pacquiao and Mikey done, basically, is the way you were describing it a while back, of course, it just seemed like he was real hush-hush on that. And, of course, when it comes to, Saudi Arabia showed some money to, obviously, Matchroom and Andy Ruiz and Joshua. But a lot of the Middle Eastern money, we've heard about big fights being there, but the money's always been funky. So that's what Crawford's side's saying. Well, I hear you, but we don't even know if that money was for sure real because they can talk numbers, but then they got to deliver. So that's basically what the holdup is, I believe. But I was surprised that Eddie didn't come out and say, because this week Aaron was like, nobody wants to see Pacquiao. No one wants Pacquiao and Garcia in the Middle East, as if they know who Terrence Crawford is, though, per se. It was just kind of funny, but he's like, people want Pacquiao Crawford. And don't get me wrong, that is a bigger fight. I'm not saying that, but it's just funny that he said it. But I did notice interview that I saw where that topic was somewhat brought up. Eddie didn't say anything. He said, well, even if I sign Crawford, they were theoretically saying if he becomes a free agent, maybe I won't have, maybe I won't be able to not necessarily afford him, but I'll lose money on him too. So it was kind of, he didn't say, well, I got news for you. Pacquiao and Garcia was the fight that was done. So that kind of makes me wonder if they're both bullshitting or what exactly is going on. Is he telling the truth? Is he not? We don't know. They did say they're trying to sneak it in before Ramadan or after. Judging by how Pacquiao's talked about his schedule, I don't think they can do one in the spring because of Congress. He usually could fight in January or sometime in July. That's been his schedule for quite some time. And it's worked well because he can have full camps rather than being a senator and then having to go to camp every day and kind of doing that till the last week or two or something like that. You can kind of see in the Horn, you can kind of see some other fights where he just wasn't up to par. When he has a full camp, that's when he's that key term, Manny Pacquiao. So I don't know, but it got freaking heated. Some of these quotes, dude. Oh my goodness gracious! And he, like Bob Arum, I don't know why he needs to make it that big of a deal. Well, he's at the age he never really has given a shit, but you just think he could maybe fake it a little bit. Because early in the week, this was November 13th. This is that Crawford breaking point with Top Rank, and kind of described the issues that they're having, and they were, the attorney was brought in, like I mentioned, and they've been dangling, this big money fight for a long time, and it just hasn't happened. And to be honest with you, they never actually, that we know, actually offered Porter, even though it sounds like Todd DeBuff said that in some quotes. The Danny Garcia was like a press run. They never even sent it to Al. They just sent it to Danny's dad, Angel. And obviously it was a low ball considering what they paid to Khan. So they really, now maybe $10 million was too much for Thurman asking, but there is a thing called negotiation. To me, it's always felt like how it's going to play out, how it's been playing out, and Spence said as much. They just, the Crawford and Arum side really wouldn't talk about it. Now they're talking about it. But before, Spence said it right to Crawford's face, dude, why don't I just take these guys out? I'll meet you at the end. Well, when you ask the last year or so, ever since they had that phone conversation off that Twitter, Crawford and Spence, to me, now he says, for a while now, he said, I want Pacquiao before Spence. I don't blame either one of them. I got to admit, I want Spencer Crawford, one of them. I don't care who gets it. I just want one of them to get that fight because it will help. It will help build the fight, and it'll make it possible, to be honest with you. But they just, and so obviously Bob has had this position for quite some time, and that's what I've always assumed, that he was just going to let Spence do his thing, go through all those fighters, beat Spence, kind of like Fury just beat Wilder, right? Beat him, and then they'll be in the power position. Well, they'll be like, all right, Porter, you come over. All right, and then you'll go through the gamut only after you've cashed out against Spence. which is what I always thought it would do. So, but here's a little bit of talk here for this fight, and this is based off of this Zoom meeting with Kinney. I believe they had a meeting with DeBuff and Arum in the top ranked legal counsel, and that's another thing. They had a meeting. They didn't necessarily have a meeting necessarily with the people that are going to give them money, but Crawford was offered $6.5 million guaranteed per sources. This is Athletic Coppinger, along with upside of the pay-per-view at $5 for every buy over 300,000. I guess he countered Crawford's side with 9.5 guarantee in an upside at 500,000. And supposedly Pacquiao, I almost called him Pacquiao, that's Manny Pacquiao, one of the sports marquee attraction, closed his side at 23.5 million. So maybe this is a real thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe some people have told him a big fat number, and he's finding a way to get that all figured out. And then if they pull it, then he's like, hey, I tried my best, you know. So I don't know if this is realistic or not. He says in Qatar that it was all a go. It was all a go. But after the fight, shit got a little out of hand. I understand what he's saying to an extent. We all know that Terrence is not the most dedicated interviewer. Has he, and on social media, he has, though, we got to give him credit because he has gotten better at it. I guess he turned down an interview with Coppinger, but if you go on Coppinger's podcast, it's not like you're going to go mainstream. You know what I mean? So, but that's not to say Crawford couldn't get better at doing more interviews and posting stuff on social media here and there a little bit more because he does have a really funny personality and he's got good comebacks and shit like that. But, yeah, there is some – I'm not trying to not say anything like, oh, Crawford has nothing to do with it. Sure, Crawford has something to do with this. And even when he did interviews, I saw a press conference and some other interview where he was looking at his phone during the interview. Like they talked to Bob for a second. He's like, oh, what'd you say? Yeah, I didn't even hear it. You know, so he is a little nonchalant with that. But Arum goes on to say he's got to promote like Teofimo Lopez does. He's got to promote like Shakur, like Manny, like Pacquiao, or like Mayweather. Well, first of all, Teofimo Lopez now, I believe, will be a ticket seller on the East for sure. But he hasn't up until this point yet. You know, and I think he brought up Lomachenko too, and it's like, well, Loma didn't have a bunch of $1 million gates or anything like that. He doesn't do great interviews. Manny Pacquiao smiles and talks his way through stuff. He wasn't doing all these crazy interviews. Like, just because you don't do an interview with Coppinger or someone in the boxing press, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that. Because we've seen plenty of fighters, you know, say, no, I don't want to do it just with that individual person. You know what I mean? It is what it is. But here's a little bit more here, talking about, you know, will he go to Al Haymon? Is he going to be able to work with Al Haymon? Blah, blah, blah. He said that's not the right question. The question is, do we want to keep him? I could build a house in Beverly Hills on the money I've lost on him in the last 3 fights. A beautiful home. Nobody questions Crawford's tremendous ability, blah, blah, blah. Made a big statement, all that. The question is, does it pay the bills? Look, you can have the greatest opera singer in the world. If the fans don't support it, you're going to be out of business. And so I understand what he's saying. You know, I do get that to an extent. But I think it's a little overboard too. And here's a little bit more of these quotes. You're not gonna go talk negative and talk bad about me and then ask me for an interview. That's what he told The Athletic. I don't care who you are. Respect me as a man. I'll give you an interview. I've never had a problem with you. Why? Because I've never seen y'all write something negative about me. Of course, everyone has their opinion. He looked good. He looked okay. That's cool. But he's saying, you know, but taking it personal, saying he's not fighting that guy and downplaying me and my accomplishments, then yeah, I'm not doing the interview. Because you're biased now, that type of And Aram says once he does it, he's intelligent, he's good at it, yada yada yada. He just doesn't do it enough. And Bradley says that's just not him. He's not going to change for anybody. He's making $4 million regardless on this last fight. Of course, he can make more, but he's not going to sell himself out and talk a bunch of trash and whatnot. So yeah, like I said, I mean, Teofimo is a great talker, but it's not like his knockouts are also a big part of why people are like all about him. He could talk shit better, no doubt. But I mean, you know, I think some of this is a little bit overboard. I would have to say. I really do. I think it's like, well, I hear what you're saying, but we all know you got to fight someone that someone knows, and Kell Brook's really not that known here. And boxing fans know that he hadn't made the weight in 3.5 years. Most people thought he was shot. Like I said, I'm not taking a bunch of credit away from Crawford. Like I mentioned, he took care of business then. If you think he was shot, well, you can't rip Crawford because he took care of business. So I guess my point is, I think it's an excuse because you've never offered shop order, not anything that we know of. The Danny Garcia was a complete press run. You know, fight week, you love to talk Spence, you love to talk all these fighters. Remember last or 2 falls ago, I guess not last fall, 2 falls ago. Wow, that went fast. But when Danny and Porter fought, and Porter won, they were going after Danny. Well, going after in a very random way. If you only send the offer to insinuate Al wouldn't show him the money. Well, I just wanted to make sure Angel saw what we were offering him, as if, you know, Heyman's going to fuck him, right? And then we saw it was like a $3 million offer. Meanwhile, Khan got like 5.5. And you didn't even send it from the sounds of it to even Al. So that's a complete plush run. We tried. He didn't take it. Well, why would Danny take less money than Amir Khan? It doesn't make any sense. And so you need the B-sides, too. Those are important. Now, I think ESPN's done a good job at exposure. 3 fights have stand out. This one stood out. And he's had 3 fights now that have stood out that have had healthy lead-ins. Actually, 2 falls ago against Benavidez. Or was that last fall? God, I'm losing. No, it is 2 falls ago. Because that's right around when he re-signed. That Benavidez, you know, went well over $2 million. I think it peaked at 2.8. It had a great college football lead in the Alabama game. He had the Heisman this last year. Did a pretty decent rating. This one did a really good rating. And had a nice lead-in. Had a college football lead-in with a popular team. So they've given him something. The lead-in was $2.4 million. The whole card was $1.75, but it peaked over $2 million. Did the main event. So he's gotten him exposure. He has gotten him exposure. He's always done really well in Omaha. Not bad in Vegas and New York, but not necessarily great. But some of that is an opponent. You know, you can't just wait for Spence and then jump on it and try to beat him, which I think he's got a good chance to beat him. But I can understand, you know, my thing is you can't be like, oh, boycott PBC. Oh, now we're really cool. We talk all the time. You know, like it's always in between. It's always this. It's always that. He says Spence wasn't ducking him. Now they're ready to fight Spence and Garcia on the same night. And I know that's just hyperbole. That's part of being a promoter, right? But my thing is, the whole thing that you got to remember is they signed this guarantee. They are the ones that made this offer to have him extend. So if you don't like the deal that you signed, that's on you too. I mean, we've said it many a times. A couple other podcasts that talk about it, Sunday Punchers, not many though. They don't make money on him. And we've tried to tell people over and over again. And now, until Bob, just like when we look at ticket sales for them in general, you know, once Pacquiao left, who does a consistent million at the gate? I want to know who. Loma snuck over it once, I believe, with Linares, or damn close. Crawford Khan, I believe that was $1.4 million or something like that. But otherwise, they're under. Like, it's like, who is selling tickets there? Ramirez, sure, he does really good numbers, ticket sales, but the revenue is low. So, and I'm not ripping these guys, but you can't sit there and say, oh, you know, all these guys they talk shit more. It seems like Stevenson's going to have a nice East Coast base there in Newark, New Jersey, and of course Madison Square, like I said, Teofimo. But it's like, dude, you're not really – first of all, he hasn't done that well with black fighters, let's be honest. But when he talks about Floyd, well, you actually didn't like when Floyd talks shit. He says that a lot. I don't like that. But then, you know, once it works for him, then he's like, I can like a good talker and shit. But my whole point is, you signed the deal, dude. You didn't offer Porter anything. You pressed run Danny Garcia. He needs to fight these guys. I mean, you put Danny Garcia and him and Barclays, that shit is doing probably $1.5 million, maybe even $2 million. It's popping off there, dude. So, I don't know, man. I like, can Crawford shoulder some of it a little bit? Sure. But not much of it, to be honest with you. Yeah, he does some interviews, don't get me wrong, but has he turned down all these high-profile interviews that we don't know about? I'm not trying to rip on Coppinger. The guy breaks a lot of news. But he's also tied to shit, clearly. So, I mean, this new NBC Sports Network, you know, he already is tied to them media. He's like their breaker, their news breaker or whatever. I saw the tweet the other day. He had to shit on Showbox just to say, hey, Ring City, they're going to do it the right way, not shitty Showbox, you know. I mean, it's been the most consistent thing in the last whatever years, but don't get me wrong. You know, with more dates, Showbox has not fallen by the wayside, but it's not necessarily what it was, but it's still pretty good. But anyway, yeah, I'm not going to go too further on this. I just want Pacquiao to be able to fight Crawford or Spence, or maybe just go fight McGregor and dip. That's cool, too. I'm not going to get mad at Manny for fighting anybody, Mike Garcia, too. But I sure would like to see Crawford or Spence get the call. Speaking of getting the call incorrectly, maybe, we don't really know. Here's the deal. That shit was a fucking debacle after this, or before this fight, what am I saying? I mean, it was bad. It was bad. That shit was freaking ugly. Of course, I'm talking about, what was it, like 3 rounds or something like that? It wasn't many. Franco, Maloney, part 2. You saw like a busier pivoting Maloney in round 1. There was some swelling in the right eye from an accidental headbutt. At least that's what they said. In that, you know, round, whatever. I'm just going off the first run through. They looked at it again, and they ended the fight. Maloney was up there screaming like he had won. And you're starting to go, well, hold on. Was it a headbutt? Was it a shoulder? What was it? Was it a thumb? What was it? You know? And I noticed they lost sound like several times. I noticed it a lot. But it took them 26 minutes to get a decision. Then they ran about a good 15, 20 minutes of promo for the main event. It's like, guys, there was 15 college football games postponed or canceled. That Alabama LSU game that was supposed to start 5 Central, that's not on even. It's postponed. So what the fuck are we waiting for? So you're running up to like 40 or 45 minutes from the end of, hey, we're going to call this fight, to the beginning of the main event. That freaking sucked. But as far as what they did here, I think the problem was the first thing they should have done is went right back to just since it's such a close, a tight fight, and they end up doing it anyway. Just show both rounds and let the people in the editing truck that we ended up seeing, let them get a nice clip of highlights, and then it'll be all nice and organized. You say, well, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this. My thing is, in the live broadcast, Bradley and Tess talked about headbutts. Right eye swelling. They talked about it. But they didn't, of course, have the volume, the audio for the replay. I wish they would have, because then at least it was almost like, well, since we're on the replay, let's replay what the fuck you guys said too. Don't play this. Don't all of a sudden act like you're Monday morning quarterback. You guys are the ones that said headbutts anyway. And by the way, obviously he did say it was an accidental headbutt, the ref. But I really wish they just would have shown it, not the headbutt. Well, the whole 2 minutes and change. Just let it, or 2 rounds, and change. Just let it play, and that way the truck can get a bunch of different angles. Because it turned into, see, that's it. Oh, wait, hold on. There does look like there's a mini. That was it. That was the jab. And so the jab did look like the one that did it just from outside looking in. Now, if you look at his eye, there is a little something under his eye. Now, I don't know if that happened in sparring, if it happened on a punch, I don't know. And they did rub heads a fair amount of time in there. There was that still shot that looked like a headbutt, but it was on. That would have been on the wrong side, So it was messed up. But to take 26 minutes was just horrendous, dude. And then to sit there and say, oh, all of a sudden it's like a conspiracy theory. Oh, and then this is what I didn't like about it. They're like, oh, okay, they're telling us that we got to rewind the tape 1:20, and if you show, and that's why I was like, dude, this on the go thing has got to be really tough for the truck. Just show the goddamn fight and let them edit, and then we can move on. But it is what it is. Like I said, that jab did look like, if you've already got a minor headbutt and then a jab, hits at the right spot, it's going to pop it, or a punch is going to pop it more. Now, one thing about that punch, it did look like there was a thumb involved. So then is that an accidental fall, or was that a clean jab? How many jabs do you see someone jab and then boom, the eye just pops open? Now you can land a punch perfectly and it pops the eye like that, puffs the eye, I should say. We've seen that too, I'm not saying. But it was just kind of like, well, that is the most definitive shot in a sense. But like I said, you can see a little mark under his eye before he hit him. So did that cause the swelling? Would it have swollen, swollen if there's a lot of, it wasn't just cut and dry. But I thought they just messed up in general. I just assume that the second-tier belt, they're going to call for a rematch and everything will be okay. Maloney got screwed. I can understand him thinking that, no doubt. But in the same breath, they call the headbutt. And remember, it's kind of like if you watch other sports, go back to NFL, if they call it a fumble. Last night, watching the Vikings game, Rudolph, the tight end, fumbles. It was called a fumble, but the knee was pretty close to to hitting before the ball looked like it came loose a little bit. The whole point is there wasn't enough footage to say 100% that was not you know what I mean? Or that was a fumble. So you got to have enough footage that says that was clearly that. Now, a lot of people are like, enough footage, Chris, what are you talking about? We saw the jab land and it puffed up. I understand that. But it says, since you saw the punch so well, did you see the thumb? You know what I mean? So it works both ways, guys. You can't just look at a punch and be like, oh, yeah. Well, what about, it did look like he accidentally, I'm not saying he went out of his way to do it, but kind of looked like there was a thumb involved, too. So it is what it is. It is what it is. Let's see here. So I got a message saying, "Oh, you haven't been listening to the show long," because he said, "Oh, now you're last week you were saying Kell Brook could win rounds and it would be because I thought it could be 2-2 or 3-3. Well, it was 2-1, wasn't it? And I said that we don't know if he's past it or whatever, but the fact is Crawford took him out. So does it really matter if he was way past it or not? He took him out. He took care of his business. So yeah, that was a debacle. that freaking sucked. I did feel bad for him. You know, it is what it is. Hopefully there's a rematch. I assume there's going to be a rematch, and then they can battle it out. But we can't go and say because Maloney won the first 2 rounds, he would have won the whole fight either. I mean, it doesn't work that way either. Moving on, and by the way, it was, 1.7 in change for the whole card and for the ESPN card, and then the main event averaged like over 2 million and peaked close to 2.1, so it was a healthy average there, or peak as well. Katie Taylor won on DAZN and Sky Sports fairly easy. She deserved kind of an easier fight, right? I think it was a Mando, actually, because she's been in a string of tough fights, I'd say. Like 3 or 4 of them? Maybe 3 out of the last 4. Terry Harper and, Thanduras? Pretty one-sided for Terry Harper. She came out with a good jab, landed some good shots early and often. There was a late right hand by Thanduras. Let me see. Did I give her a round? I'm not sure. But she started jabbing and adding a little bit more movement by the 3rd and 4th round. A couple of body shots. Overall, kind of quick combos. Then she started really off the jab. She started pivoting instead of just moving. She also started throwing left hooks. I liked her defense up close, good upper body movement, and then throw a jab. And then it was kind of like jab and pot shots a good chunk of the way. She worked the body the last little bit. Then, she landed, I don't know, several body shots, did Harper. Maybe like 6 to 8 of them. And you could see then Thanduras was in trouble. Thanduras was in, her nose was all bloodied up. I think it was more body shots, a couple right hands to the head. It was a TKO. It was a good stoppage. Good performance by Terry Harper. So we'll see where she goes there. I won't talk too much more about that. On that ESPN, Murtala, he won pretty easy, looked pretty good. Joshua Greer Jr. and Edwin Rodriguez. This actually was a very good fight. Rodriguez, I gave the first round, good 2-way round, but I thought he landed better shots. Greer was a little busier in the 2nd round. Then the 3rd and the 4th I gave to Rodriguez, who came into this 11-5-1. So he was a clear underdog. A jab and right hand, landed the better shots. His left hooks, hard right hands. To me, he was doing a little bit more through 4 rounds. 5th round was competitive. Could have went either way. There was a low blow by Greer, but he landed his jab. I did think Ramirez was missing too much in that round. That one was close, like I said. Gave Greer the 6th and the 7th, though. He started kind of, adding pressure, landing uppercuts, clean shots. The fight kind of moved inside, and that surprisingly actually had Greer winning the last 6th, 7th, and 8th off of the inside. The jabs, landed short shots. So I had it 4-4. And the judges, one had it for Rodriguez 77-75, and 2 had 76-76. So, I thought that was a very competitive. That was probably the most competitive fight that went the whole distance that I saw. I didn't see every single fight, like as far as scoring it, but I thought that was a good fight. And maybe Rodriguez won that fight. I don't know. It was a pretty freaking close fight in my mind. Real quick, on FS1, F.A. Apoche and Joe Jones, he made quick, 3 rounds, 4 rounds tops. F.A. Apoche, right off the bat, left hooks, right hands to the head or body, scored a knockdown. I think it was a left hook to the body. Then another 10-8, 35 seconds left. Few hard right hands knocked him down. Then early in the 3rd round, he jumped on him. I think it was the left hand to the body. 38-17, just outworked him. Carrera beat Aria Dondo? I think it was Aria Dondo. That was a competitive fight. I could have seen a draw in that one. I wouldn't have had a problem with it whatsoever. I had a 4-4 or 5-3. Correa. I think that he closed a little stronger down the stretch. But it was a close round, or the close fight. He was kind of busy early on. Then that Henry dude, I thought, took the second and third. He landed harder shots. He was countering with his left hook as well. Kind of back and forth, fourth round, jab and counter right hands from Correa. I'm looking at it, though, and it's about 4-4. If I had a winner, maybe Carrera. This was kind of crazy, though. They announced it all funky. They were announcing like a scorecard 70-74, and it's like, what is that? They redid it. They gave that Arya and Dondo, they gave him the fight first, and they was like, you know what, there were scorecards were all messed up or whatever, and it did seem like they were messed up. But then it turned out 76-76. 78-74, 80-27, so he ended up getting the dub, which I thought I was okay with, to be honest with you. And then Vidal, I should say, took on Edward Ortiz, and there wasn't much to that one at all. He came out with pressure, landed right hands, left hooks, left uppercuts, midway point, several right hands and a left hook, TKO. That was about it. So Vidal, I did think would get a little bit more rounds in, and he didn't. But hey, he looked good doing it. So that kind of sums up some of the undercard stuff on FS1 and DAZN and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and go to the callers here. I see Carcino on the line. Carcino, what's going on, man? How the hell are you?
Oh man, I'm great now. I just got off the date.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how'd that go?
Oh, your text kind of got me out of it, so.
I was hoping that case. I waited a little longer just in case so I could come in there and make a nice little move to get you out of it.
Man, I mean, I'm just not used to this slow movement. I'm like, gosh, the restaurant was cool. I never ate that Japanese spot like that Kyoto restaurant. That was nice. I just would have rather went to a local bar if I known they were going to charge me that much money.
Right.
I'm like, wait a minute, aren't we supposed to be in a lockdown?
Yeah, right.
I'm like,
so you have lockdown
hey, how
prices?
is this place open?
Yeah, you got to lock down your prices, man. Shit.
Oh, my gosh. I know. It was just like that movie Goodfellas. Like when Ray Liotta's character is in there, when he first met it, ended up being his wife, he was like, when they were ordering dessert, I was ordering a check.
Yeah.
That's how I was. I was like standing over her with a coat on, ready to go.
I can just see the drop-off, too. That drop-off scene where he walks down the block, turns right around, like, yeah, bye.
Yeah, it was almost like that, except for she got out the car. I wasn't getting out the car to open the door. No way. I was like, you're on the clock. We got to get out of here.
That's funny, dude. I like that. That's good.
Yeah, nice girl. It's just, this trip is a lot. Like, I would have to get a room if I stayed out here. Like, they want me to hang out and stay out longer. I'm like, this is like almost an hour drive from where I live. Like, geez. Cannot make the cut coming all the way out here. Like, an hour getting here and an hour going back.
Yeah, that doesn't sound ideal. That doesn't sound ideal at all.
Yeah, she's like, I can come out by you. I'm like, no.
Yeah, right? We don't need no that.
No,
yeah.
I don't need you out here by me. Oh,
you can
man.
Google Maps if you want, but I'm not going to let you know the Google.
Right. I'll come visit. Don't come visit me.
I'll call you. Don't call me. I'll call you.
Right. Oh, man. So, yeah,
right.
The fight this week, man, was something else. Yeah, that Joshua Greer fight wasn't supposed to go that far.
No. No, not at
That
all.
was supposed to be a showcase fight. Rodriguez was supposed to be just like a tune-up.
I didn't see a pillow, Carcino. I didn't see that pillow. Did you see the pillow? Because I didn't see the pillow at the end.
Yeah. all I saw was I remember the Greer fight, man. I was like, man, Greer was supposed to go through. I mean, remember me and Bob Arum did an interview like right before the fight, and we talked about everything, you know, Wilder Fury, the whole nine. So as we were sitting there listening to it, I mean, you know, like when the fight came around, I'm watching. I'm like, man, Greer's not ready. I mean, he looked good closing the fight, but, man, he did not look good early on, man. I don't think he won, to be honest. I wasn't really scoring it, but from what I'm seeing it from the eye test, he wasn't winning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, this is an 8-rounder. He's already given up. I remember saying it like it was like the 3 rounds in. I'm like, wait a minute. This is an 8-round fight. He better get a knockout soon, because I don't think Rodriguez got the memo. He was supposed to be the tune-up.
He definitely did.
Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, I don't think Greer's kind of ready for it, you know. So.
Well, and then let's talk about the delay debacle. Like, my thing is, I just had a rant on this Maloney-Franco thing. My thing is, Carcino, when it first happened, okay, why don't you just replay the whole fight and let the truck get the editing done so then it's not so back and forth and, oh, they want you to rewind it 20 seconds this way and a minute that way. And it was just so all over the place. And I don't know, it just kind of sucked. It was like, what? It took them 26 minutes to do it, and then they still did a promo for 20 minutes, so you're like 45 minutes to the end of that fight so Crawford got in the ring. But it just leave it up to boxing to mess up instant replay in front of a mainstream audience.
I was having a hard time trying to figure out what we were actually replaying here, because I'm like, what are we watching? Right, what are we watching? And I kept thinking did somebody sit on the remote and hit rewind? Because they're showing the fight again. And I'm like, I thought this just was over with, the Maloney thing. And I'm like, Maloney was kicking his ass. And my thing is, I looked at Franco, and I know he's a Golden Boy fighter, but I think that was probably his last fight with Golden Boy. And I had Maloney just dominating. Like, Maloney could do anything he wanted to with. Now, my thing is, what was interesting to me was the fact that he's a Golden Boy fighter and nobody from Golden Boy showed up to support him. Not Oscar, nobody. Eric Gomez, none of them. They did not show up. And Robert,
too. You know, from the first fight, they won the fight too. So you think they'd be all amped to be there?
Yeah. And the thing is, they didn't. I don't think they were. I think that was his last fight with Golden Boy, because even Robert Garcia brought that up in the post-fight interview. How Golden Boy wasn't even there for him. And he's supposed to be a Golden Boy fighter. And this is how they treated him.
And it's not like they got a ton of champs over there, you know?
Right. You know, I mean, they just lost their biggest money maker, the person that brought the money in. So I'm like, he's gone. Now you really done. You got to link yourself along with anybody that's going to do business with you and take a fight. You know, and it's sad to see what happened to Golden Boy, but it is what it is now. Now the main event, though, like with Kell Brook and Terrence Crawford, man, did I love everything about it, because it was exactly how I thought it was going to probably go. But it just happened a lot sooner than, anticipated. What surprised me was because nothing was surprised. I knew Kel would have the advantage early while Bud was trying to figure him out and trying to figure out a way to be effective. Kel was going to have his moments. He was going to stand his ground, and a lot of people didn't realize who Kel Brook, really was. Kel Brook can fight. He can box. So, and he's strong and solid. So he got Terrence's respect. Terrence had to back out a couple of times after taking some shots early. And what he did was, once he went southpaw, he saw that took away the jab of Kel Brook. Once he went southpaw, Kel Brook was done. He was in the shell. And he was unsure of himself when it comes to letting punches go. Then he started to do something that amateurs do and make a mistake. Kel started telegraphing his punches. He started looking so focused on landing something of his own that he forgot to be cautious. And he went in reckless, once again head hunting, and never saw that he was timed or like a counter hook jab, whatever you want to call that kind of punch, but
yeah,
he wasn't ready
perfect.
for that.
What it was.
Yeah, it was right on the button. He never saw it coming, and he was done. I mean, he didn't know where he was. I remember him saying, "What? What do you mean?" When they was counting him when he fell into the ropes. They were like, "Yeah." He had no idea he had been caught. Very interesting fight.
Definitely a good performance too. Because no
matter, great performance.
No matter, I was saying it earlier, Garcino, no matter if you thought Brook was past his prime or not, well, Crawford did his job. Crawford took care of him regardless, no matter how you look at where, because if he's past his prime, cool, well, he knocked him out in the fourth round. So that, okay, then he took care of that. And now, obviously, during the fight week, we saw the tension, we saw the bad vibes kind of back and forth. But then old Bobby definitely, Mr. Aram definitely let Terrence have it, talking about all the money I've lost to him the last couple of fights. I could buy a house in Beverly Hills, in a really nice one. He said, a beautiful one. He had a lot to say about him. He was basically trying to blame Crawford because he doesn't do interviews or talk enough or whatever. Where do you sit on all this? And we can't forget that they did agree to terms for the extension, so that guarantee is what Bob offered. Where do you stand on this stuff? Because they got pretty heated.
Well, it's a difficult situation because I kind of, this is where the business of boxing gets mixed up with the actual fight. You just want to see all the fight going, and I guess I could see it. I could see a lot of it going Bob's way. I could see a lot of people doing that with the contracts and the money. And I'm just like, I know what I really want to discuss, and that was Joe Tessitore, the announcer. His disrespect of Kel Brook was like shocking. I thought I would ever hear an announcer be that brutal towards another fighter. That was wrong. I mean, that was wrong on so many levels.
That quote was, "Take that $2 million with you," as if he quit or something. Like, I saw that.
Go back to the UK.
Yeah, like, dude, you're disrespecting the guy that you want, your guy that you're trying to push to make it look like a good win. You made it sound like he was cashing out.
Yep. And man, and then the interview was even worse. He's asking. That's one thing you don't do, is ask another fighter who's gonna win between him, the fighter he just fought, and somebody else. after he just got out of a fight. He don't care. It's just unprofessional. But, you know, he did
and they
the
kept
best
going
he
back
could.
to it, too. I know you
Yeah.
said all that, but who do you think? It's like, dude, just stop, man.
Yep. And I was disappointed by it. I was really disappointed by it because I thought, like, there'll be some type of journalism or professionalism, and it just wasn't any. So it was a sad day. Yeah. So he told me, Bob Arum told me in the interview that Pacquiao is, he said Pacquiao is going to be fighting with Terrence Crawford either before or after Ramadan. That's what's next. Lomachenko is going to fight Gervonta Tank Davis.
I think it'll be after, you know, because he can't fight in the spring because of the contract.
Yeah. Yep. So Gervonta Tank Davis will be fighting Lomachenko at 130 pounds. Yep, that's going down. Floyd wants to do the fight. Bob Arum says, let's do it. And there it is.
That'd be great.
Yep. That's going to do well to help their image of them not getting the right fighters. So now they'll finally have a fighter, you know, because they've been penalized all this time for saying they're not making the best fights when they should be making the best fights. Now they can put all of that to rest and say, look, we gave you a great fight. Now it's up to you guys. You know, so now a PBC fighter can fight a top-ranked fighter. And it don't have to be a mismatch.
Or a mandatory, too. You know, a lot of times when that's happening, it's in a mandatory, you know. Like, that's a good fight, but it is a mandatory. So it counts, but it doesn't really count.
Yeah. Aaron wants him to go back down to 130 where he's more effective.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
But Lomachenko still wants to fight this year. He's like, no, sit out this year, get well, and then we'll talk next year.
Okay.
So that's what he wants. He's like, Floyd wants to fight Lomachenko, and hey, they want to do it. We're going to do it.
Yeah, it's a big fight.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's a big
put it on pay-per-view. And this is what Arum also spoke about is all these pay-per-views that's coming out, growing in boxing. Can't put out all these pay-per-views when guys who really should just be on network cable, and you're putting all of them on television. And it's like, what are you doing? Well, that fight should be on regular TV. And you just sit there and put this thing on pay-per-view and charge $70 to a bunch of people that don't really know boxing. Now, they're going to think this is how boxing is all the time, with these mismatches and crazy, you know, setups. And right away, they're gonna be turned off. And for what? So you can make, what, $50 more per person?
Yeah, that is a good fight, though. I like that fight a lot. What about this Wilder Fury thing? Now all of a sudden they figured out, you know what? There's no crowd. We can't do a late. They're not going to get any big money from ESPN when it's late afternoon in here during the college football season. Obviously, they're not going to get a gate over in the UK. It's a tough pay-per-view sell when you're not fighting anybody that people know. But Tyson Fury was big on, hey, I want to stay busy. Now they're saying, oh, we'll be back January, February, and March. Well, isn't that the two dates, January and February, that ESPN and Fox, that's what Bob said, that said we need to maneuver this date? So could this, we know litigation, arbitration is coming up here. They're going to send it to this judge potentially. But maybe this trilogy ends up happening after all. It's kind of weird how now he's okay with fighting in January and February and March.
Oh, man, I don't know. It might happen. And and then it'll be a knockout, and then everybody can say, okay, that's just it. You can't beat Fury. So we'll see what happens in the end.
Yeah, we'll see. It was just kind of funny how, I want to stay busy, and then all of a sudden, I'm not fighting in December. Well, I thought you wanted to stay busy. Anything else, though, that you want to talk about, sir?
No, that was pretty much it right now. I don't really have anything too much right now.
All right, man.
Just trying to get home.
And tell the folks where you can find that Bob Arum interview, because that's probably a really, really good one. I got to go check that out.
Oh yeah, that's my, what was that? I'm trying to think what
the
name
Patreon?
of the video. No, it's not on Patreon. It's like Brook prediction video for the fight. And then it has Deontay Wilder and Fury, and it's just here Arum just says, "What is he, crazy?" Spike Water, Mark Breland.
Right.
That's his trainer. So why was your trainer spike your water?
Yeah, and then now the nail. Well, now somehow the nail cut his inside ear. It's like, what? A nail? The nails of your finger? What are you talking about? He should have just saved this for the press conference, and it would have just built so much hype during the fight. But if you're not going to fight him, you might as well not make all these excuses.
Yeah,
all right, buddy.
I hear you there.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you calling in and finding time, man. I'm glad I could be a good excuse for you too with a phone call or a text message.
Oh, thank you, man. You gave me a way out.
One more thing though, how'd you like that game last night? I'm just kidding, Garcino. I'm just kidding. It's a joke.
Oh man, yeah, y'all finally got a win over us.
Seriously, dude. I mean, dude. Once I saw Hicks leave the game, I thought, oh, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Now we can get 4 yards on the ground. Because that dude always kills us, man. Oh, my God. He just dominates us. I just figured I'd throw that in. All right, buddy. You take it easy, man.
Okay. All right, man. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Garcino. Take it easy, man. Peace.
Hey.
All right, Garcino for life. Go check out that Bob Arum interview. Garcino's been gracious enough to put Bob on probably 3 or 4 times on the show. And, Bob, he'll answer some questions. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you can usually tell when he's kind of in between, or you can read him pretty well, but we all know Bob doesn't hold back. That's what we do know about good old Bobby. I hope to have even 70% of the energy that guy has. And speaking of, this was him after.
Said, no, there was no head fed. Then they waited for the end of the fight, which they're still allowed to look, and they kept with it to protect the referee who didn't know what the hell he was doing.
Did you care to comment about the exchange you had with Bob Bennett ringside afterwards?
I'm telling him I'm absolutely disgusted. I mean, people blame me because I'm the promoter. I got nothing to do with the goddamn thing. I just want a fair adjudication. They made a mistake. The referee made a mistake, and they have his back. It's clear. I mean, it's not even close.
What do you do going forward, Bob? This is where all your fights have been.
Get the fuck out of Vegas.
Oh, Bob, I love you. I love you. He said, what do you do? I'm getting the fuck out of Vegas, he said. Oh, and then here is Bob Bennett, the guy who has been, I'm not going to say much there, but this is Kevin Aioli. Well, there's some things I could say about him, but I'm not going to do it. His Dana White piece was just laughable. But this is what he had to say about the ruling here.
Original call was what?
The original call was made by referee Russell Mora that there was a headbutt in the first round. Subsequent review of instant replay revealed that there was 2 possibilities of a headbutt, 2 the fighter's right eye. And, of course, you could see clearly some jabs upon reviewing instant replay that just aggravated and made the eye even worse.
Okay.
However, on our instant replay rules, they clearly state in the third paragraph that unless there's clear and conclusive evidence that
it can't be overturned, basically. So it's kind of like, well, the guy, he didn't make a football move. If you guys watch the NFL, he didn't make a football move. That football move thing has always cracked me up ever since they started saying that when it came to this replay. Didn't make a football move. If you got cleats, shoulder pads, a helmet on, any fucking movement you make on the field is a football move because you're playing football. But anyway, so yeah, that was quite entertaining. I would have to say that was good old. But like I said, if I could just have 70% of Bob Arum's energy, even in my 70s. I know he's not in his 70s. If I could have that in my 70s, I would be very, very thankful. So yeah, that basically kind of wraps up a variety of stuff when it comes to that. I mentioned that the kind of strange, all of a sudden, Tyson Fury, Frank Warren came out and said we're not fighting anymore. Basically, this is from where the hell is the source? I think it's Boxing News. I think it's a combination, one UK, one here. But anyway, he said this is by Charles Brun. Tyson Fury's promoter, or one of them, Frank Warren, says he was unable to secure the fans, which we kind of knew that wasn't going to be the case. Now they're looking for February, March for his next fight. He could be, Fury now could be facing Deontay Wilder next in the U.S., especially if the arbitration meeting is ruled in favor of the Bronze Bomber. But I should say, Bob, in a variety of interviews, say that he feels confident that that mediator that they all kind of know and do business with will side with him. But it takes a while. It takes a little money for the lawsuits, that type of thing. And now he's kind of in between where he's like, well, here's the deal. Why don't we just wait for that Pulev-AJ fight and then go from there? So it is expected that the decision will be made soon, the mediator contract thing, with the rematch clause thing, obviously. And who knows, there might be something in there that it's kind of like, well, we were all in agreement. And also, like, when ESPN, Fox, Top Rank, and Shelley and Al, they're all in agreements on all this stuff, and they're negotiating in good faith, and they're moving these dates. And Wilder has said recently he was ready to go for October. They moved it to December, and he was okay with that. And then they just assumed that moving it to January, February would only help the pay-per-view. Obviously, it'd be very close to when they fought last year, and you could push it toward, during the NFL playoffs, which is huge, obviously, right? So he was kind of like, well, now all of a sudden, a date expired. But my whole point is they were negotiating good faith, and I saw some UK people say, oh, Wilder this, Wilder that. It's like, well, Fury technically is the one that left the agreement, and you do have ESPN, Fox doing business together. And so with a lot of money on the line to an extent. So that's kind of a bad faith type thing too. So we can sit there and rip, Wilder for all the excuses that we've done that plenty of times. But this one's on Fury for leaving the fight. And I'm not saying, oh, he's ducking him, he don't want to fight him. But basically he's like, hey, and even Eddie Hearn said, if we get to the situation, I don't want Fury fight in February, March, because we're going to get by Pulev and then we'll be ready April, May for a big fight. So it's just all kind of funky, and I do believe, we're going to have to wait for the arbitration, the mediator and all that, the arbitration meeting, but also what happens in about a month, right? Something like that. So it is random, though, to sit there and say, I'm not waiting around. Oh, wait, I got to wait around. So it's kind of funky how that would go. So maybe the trilogy's on, maybe it's not. I have no clue. As far as the fights this weekend, we do have the first episode of that Ring City on NBC Sports Network. Foster and Roman, kind of a young trying to climb back up the ladder of a prospect going against a faded vet. Zapata and Ramirez, Eduardo Hernandez and Eduardo Garza. So they have 4 fights on the card. So we'll give that a shot. UFC Fight Pass also has a card. There's a card from Mexico, Sheffield, and I don't see anything on there. FS as far as the broadcast network, I mean. DAZN has a fight. This is a good little test for Conor Benn against Sebastian Formella, who showed some gameness and skill, I guess you could say, in a one-sided loss, of course, to Sean Porter back in August. But still, he did all right. I think it's a good test for him. That's on DAZN on Saturday. Also, FS1 is back. An unbeaten prospect, Starling Castillo, against Austin Dulé. That might be interesting. And Javier Fortuna is taking on the dude Lozado. Lozada beat I'm missing it now. What the hell am I? Oh, Felix Verdejo a couple years back. But obviously this is more of a stay busy fight because Fortuna was supposed to fight Linares. I mean, technically he was supposed to fight Campbell, and Campbell and him were going to fight, and then the winner fights Devin. Haney was involved. We heard that Fortuna-Haney thing. We heard Fortuna and maybe Gary Russell. And obviously Fortuna in Garcia, I believe, was getting thrown around. But Fortuna literally was supposed to fight Linares. I think he got COVID. So this is more of a stay busy FS1. The FS1 cards have been better lately than the Fox cards, I think. So you never know. Also, bestinboxing.com from Tijuana, Mexico, has a card. Tampa, nothing. Streamer, nothing. Has something. That's about, as far as televised, that's about it. Obviously, this was going to be the Spence and Garcia fight weekend until it got pushed back. So, couple other news items to talk about, and then we'll have the boxing Twitter segment as well, where we read some just ridiculous tweets from the media and fanboys, and some really good tweets too that are kind of pose a good question. But one of the biggest news today, Canelo Alvarez versus Callum Smith is finalized for December 19th in DAZN. We've heard it's Texas. There is a rumor that it's the Alamo Dome, which would make sense to be able to put fans in it. I don't know where Texas is going to be in a couple of weeks. We know that they're popping off. They have over 1 million cases themselves. I got a couple of buddies that live there. One in Dallas, who they're having kind of a little issue. I know El Paso. Shouts out to El Paso, man. They've had a rough time. They're, those handful of cities across the country when it was really bad. They were running out of, they're running out of room in the morgues. So they have those portable trucks with the cooler in them. And unfortunately, rest in peace to these people, but they are just overworked over everything. They have no space. They've been putting them, in these trucks. And it's inmates are actually doing the job right now. I just saw this report on it. So I don't know if they're going to be able to have fans. I don't even know if we can make it another 10, 12 days before they shut down that Cowboy Stadium, Garcia and Spence. But then again, if it sits 100,000 and you only have like 10 or 15,000, you can really spread it out. So I look back to that Alamo Dome with Leo and Gervonta. It was super spread out. So it's really up to the governor, Do they say groups of 500 or 50 or whatever, or do they just keep it how it is? My guess is they're going to keep it how it is. But so that's what I hear. I'm hearing Alamo Dome. And Canelo was big on fighting this year. He wanted to fight this year. There was talks about him and Caleb Plant, but it just didn't make sense. One, for a pay-per-view for that, that date, December 19th, because we know Fox wouldn't have been cool with it. Now Showtime could have been cool with it, but it was 2 weeks after the Spence. It seemed like if it's a good fight, if it's a pay-per-view, then you should build it, and so it just didn't work out. But right now, Eddie's obviously the lead promoter for Smith, and so he got him back through that on DAZN. And Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy has got to be pissed that he's back. Not that he signed a long-term deal, but he's back fighting, which isn't really a huge surprise, really, for this fight. We'll see where it goes from here. But to be back fighting on DAZN and for Golden Boy not to be a part of that is completely their fault. It's just unbelievable how the media has let Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy off. They just let him off. We won't even talk shit about him because we want to be cool with Ring TV and all the writers. This is from Jake Donovan, speaking of a solid writer, senior writer for BoxingScene.com. We're actually going to have him on the show here maybe next week, maybe the week after, and get back to the ongoing segment that we're going to have. But, it makes a lot of sense for DAZN UK, right? It makes a ton of sense because, they're launching in the UK and many other places, but it's nice, even though it's 4 a.m, to have Callum Smith, a UK fighter, going against Canelo. That lines up pretty well. So kudos to Canelo. We were all wondering what he was going to do. Some people think he'll sign a 3 or 4 fight deal. Some people he'll just go fight by fight. Mikey Garcia was able to go fight by fight with Al and then went to DAZN later. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen. But there was rumors that the PBC did offer him a 3-fight deal with Caleb Plant being the first one. And it sounds like, even in this article, it sounds like they're going to revisit that after this. It was just Canelo really wanted to fight this year. He hasn't fought since, in about a year. So it's kind of a quick turnaround. No point in selling a pay-per-view like that. It'll be on DAZN. So that's cool. It's a good fight. I mean, a lot of people look at Callum Smith with George Krobes, obviously coming off that injury where they had to delay the fight, and he never really looked that good. But hey, Callum Smith took care of business, and also John Ryder. Technically he probably should be rematching that, but hey, it's a big moment for Callum Smith, and let's hope he puts on a good show. But considering the fight's in 5 weeks, something like that, it's a good fight. Is it the best fight out there? No, but it's still pretty good. It's still pretty good, I'd say. So that is final. By the way, speaking of the UK in general, David Allen, heavyweight David Allen, retires. I guess he got concussed in sparring, which that's never a good thing, right? So kudos to him, man. That's a good call. Just hang him up, man. So it's always kind of a rough way to go out, but that's pretty cool. Not cool for him, but hey, it was smart. It's nice to see someone make a good decision and be like, you know what? That should be a sign. The writing's on the wall, and I'm going to take that as a sign to do it. So anyway, here's some news from Boxing Scene that Tyson and Jones pay-per-view. It's going to double as a concert. Lil Wayne, French Montana, Wiz Khalifa, YG, DaBaby, all set to each will do multiple song performance during the event. The event platform, event host Trilla announced. Trilla is backed by a long list of entertainers, including Snoop and Pitbull and The Weeknd, yada, yada, yada. So if you're trying to find a multiple layers of people to market to, Tyson's going to fight in their concerts? Okay, yeah, why not? You never know. You never know. Maybe people will dig that out just off that. You never know. So that's just a little bit of news. I don't like to go into that fight too much because, it is what it is. But, whatever. Let's go to some fight news here. Where is it? Oh. Okay, this is actually a quote from Bob. We spent all this money on replay, and there's no headbutt. Get out of the ring, you bum. That's what he was saying to Mora. That's funny. Oh, Shakur Stevenson does now have an opponent, Toka Khan Clary. That's the bubble. The co-feature Edgar Berlanga is on the card. He'll probably open. Felix Verdejo against Nakatani, which I like that fight. That's a good fight. As a main event, I mean, it's like a month away, December 12th, right? So, I mean, they don't have to sell tickets. So you would have liked to get a better opponent than that or just put on a better fight than that. But then again, you have Shakur. He's stepping in. He fought, in July or June? June, I think. It is what it is. It's not disappointing for Shakur because it's going to be a good look for him. It's gonna be on ESPN. It's gonna get a big rating. I believe they're still doing the Heisman. It's a week earlier than the end of the season than they normally do it, but because usually it's December. What would be December 5th would be the conference finals, and then the next week is when they always have that Heisman Trophy award ceremony. And there's boxing. This would be the 4th year after it. I think that's still the case. So it's going to be a good look, but you'd like to, you'd like a better main event. But like I said, I do like Verdejo and Nakatani, and Stevenson's young enough to where it's not like a bad fight. It's just, it's just one of those, just one of those things. Teddy Atlas says, here's a trivia question. When's the last time boxing fired anybody? Because they're talking about, judges and refs and all that. And that is a good point. I mean, I guess him. No, Steve Kim maybe. No, I'm just kidding. But that is a good point. Are these people going to pay for it? You know what I mean? Are these people going to actually pay for it? And this is what Carcino was talking about. Oscar De La Hoya was tweeting, wow, production for ESPN is amazing. Let's go, baby. Crawford Spence going down. By the way, in all fairness, I did not see a headbutt. And this is from the Garcia camp. Thanks for coming to the fights and support your champ, Oscar. And to everyone from Golden Boy you sent to be here with us. But he did say that they actually got a call that we can't show up. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. This is Chris Mannix. I wouldn't count on Manny Pacquiao fighting Crawford. Pacquiao's team is far more interested in Mikey Garcia. That puts Top Rank in a difficult spot. If they can't make a Spence fight, they may have to let go of Bud. He does make a good point there. It's funny. Based off the overnight markets, like the ratings, Orlando, Tampa Bay, and Jacksonville were all in the top 5. And that's obviously Florida. A lot of people are like, oh, this game's over. And it's so funny to hear people that only watch boxing, and I'm just messing with you guys. I just watch a lot of sports, so this happens in sports all the time. I always harken back to the early 2000s when I'm watching the Timberwolves with KG and company in the playoffs, mind you, going against Denver with Melo, and we're waiting to be able to watch the game live because TNT's in the overtime game, and I believe it was the Pistons and the Pacers when Reggie Miller got blocked by Tashawn Prince. And like we were well into like the second quarter before they went to that. And that's before they had like True TV, which they could probably put it on there. I think TBS didn't go to TBS because TBS had like a hit show on. So we're all like, we gotta fucking wait here. So my point is it happens. But people were just freaking out. It's funny because it happens every time. By the way, thoughts and prayers go out to Joe Cortez, who is in the hospital right now for COVID. So hopefully he can push through that. Let's hope. Before we get to boxing, Twitter. Oh, here's a post by Adrian Broner. Look, everybody, just got Cash App. Cash App me $13 so I ain't gotta make a OnlyFans. My Cash App is about billions89. Send me $13 on my Cash App about $about billions89. Whatever you can afford will be helpful. My $13 ass need it, and I will be grateful. Oh, Adrian. About billions, huh? Is there any other fight news? Oh, that bridge weight thing. The bridge to nowhere belt. That's what we got to start calling it. The WBC bridge to nowhere belt. Just another way to get some more money. Now, one thing, when it first got announced, Mauricio Suleiman said, hey, we're not going to force fighters to fight for this belt. If they want to fight at normal heavyweight, cool. Obviously, a guy like, Usyk kind of, but also Wilder. There's fighters where you're like, but he was saying, hey, you can fight wherever the hell you want. This is just a bridge to get there. So build up your body, pause, and then, get some money on the back end, basically. But here's the thing that's starting to bug me. Well, it already bugged me. I haven't actually talked about this yet, but the WBC Prez to lower, this is BoxingScene.com, to lower the cruiserweight limit back to 190, which will force boxers to the bridge weight. And to me, that part pisses me off because you just got done saying, hey, you guys can fight wherever the hell you want, except we're gonna fuck up cruiserweight. So it forces the because before cruiserweight wasn't all the way to 200. So now the dudes from 190 to 200 are going to have to go fight, and they don't want to go to heavyweight. That's the whole point, and their body probably is adjusted to this. So now they have to fight for the bridge to nowhere, and who's not going to take that money-wise? They're going to be like, screw it, I'll take it, But here it is. A few days ago, World Boxing Council President Mauricio Suleiman created a mountain of negative press when he announced blah, blah, blah. So the established new weight class is called bridge weight, which runs 200 to 224, and obviously situated between cruiserweight and heavyweight. So 200 to 224. However, 10 years ago is what he said the WBC raised the cruiserweight limit from 190 to 200 in order for smaller heavyweights to compete in that weight class. Now the WBC is looking to drop the cruiserweight limit to 190, which in turn will force numerous fighters to compete at the bridge weight if they're unable to cut down. It also creates a dangerous scenario where cruiserweights who are unable to make 190 will be forced to trade punches with a heavyweight that could be all the way up to 224. We are eventually looking to move back to 190. When we moved it up to 200, it was precise for the scenario, blah, blah, blah. So, it just it's sickening. By the way, $199 for the UK price for the zone on the new launch. Sky Sports boxing-wise, you just don't know. By the way, I did hear that Alamo Dome thing through Jake Donovan. So I want to give him credit to that. Okay, I think we are into the boxing Twitter mode. Here's a little from IFL TV. Eddie Hearn has stated that if Tyson Fury and Wilder fight, they end up fighting in February or March, then Anthony Joshua won't wait around. So he wants them to wait around for a month, or like Fury to wait around for a month and then fight him. Well, he'll be going well over a year without a full training camp and a fight. So that's kind of weird too. But he said we just go right to, Usyk, which is no big surprise, I suppose, but whatever. There was a rumor out there that Formella has COVID. So I wonder if I saw that on Twitter just to say it straight up. Okay, let's get to Twitter. The Twitter segment, the boxing Twitter or Twitter boxing, like Leonard would say. Okay. If the PBC numbers are sluggish in the December 5th Fox pay-per-view, with Spence and Garcia, if they're low, basically, if they suck, then Aaron believes that this will sway PBC founder Al Heyman to become willing to make a guarantee earnings bonanza with Spence and Crawford. I don't know if that's a bonanza just yet. And Sean Gibbons said wrong answer. And Sean Gibbons has always been like, we're not in serious talks when it came to Pacquiao and Crawford. He had always kind of stuck to that. So take that how you want it. Maybe if Aaron would make the fights people actually care about in a consistent basis, he would lose money. Maybe if Aaron actually bothered to negotiate instead of these take it or leave it deals with the opponents, then maybe he would make fights that people want to see. He makes a pretty good point there. Predictably, there will be a rewriting of Kell Brook's career. At his best, he was just a notch below the top end of the sport. Should have been a multi-weight world champ, fell victim to ill discipline, squeezed out some solid paydays, but was badly mismanaged. Just a cautionary tale. Yeah, I think he was poorly mismanaged in the Golovkin fight. Otherwise, yeah, to not compete for a belt was kind of weird once he went to 154. Because what was that? May 2017? Late May with that Sheffield fight outdoor with Spence? It's a long-ass time not to go to get a big fight. Boxing, this is Brian Campbell. Boxing adopts instant replay and somehow becomes sketchier. Very on brand. No shit, dude. In front of a mainstream audience. Why is Crawford, this one just sent to me, why is Crawford sending Tom Rake a letter through his lawyer expressing frustration that they are unable to ink him a fight with the PBC guys if it's the PBC and Al Heyman that are ducking him? Don't answer that. We know the deal. He was talking to Max Kellerman. This one was a little funky about the whole delay in the college football thing. Here's the deal. They pay a lot more for college football. And they have 4 games a day on ESPN. They got one that kicks off at like 11 or 12. Then they got a 2:30 slot. Then they got one that's at 6. Then they got a West Coast. They have 4 games to get you in one day. Not 2 like NFL and then a different, like CBS and Fox does the daytime stuff, right? Then NBC does the Sunday Night Football, ESPN does the Monday Night Football. And I try to explain this to people. And they have a contract. Now, ESPN is giving boxing the slot of the night out of 4 slots, 4 games normally. These are contractual things. They're not going to start a game that starts at 11 a.m. on the Central Time and started at 9 just because of boxing. We should be happy or just not go too nuts. Delaying a boxing to air college football, to air a college football blowout is standard. At this point, I want Arkansas to come back and force overtime just to see if ESPN tells Crawford not to step in the ring until midnight. Honestly, King of Sports can't figure out how long average football game is. It's like, dude, they're right around 3.5 hours, And these people get so mad that it says it's live. First of all, it's 2020, or we're in the 2000s. It's live sports, guys. The whole I didn't extend my DVR, dog. You're watching live sports. That's on you. If you can't figure it out by now, you got to admit that's on you. I mean, some of this stuff is like, dog, calm down, dude. I mean, every time I hear this, and I get it, I get some of it, but it's like, dude, calm down, man, calm down. that. It happens with every sport, dude. When something goes into overtime, they wait a little bit. I mean, the semifinals a couple years ago, the first game of the semifinals went deep into overtime, multiple overtimes, and they had to wait for that other one, and they started it, yada, yada, yada. Khan fought anyone and everyone but gets shit on for getting knocked the fuck out. Meanwhile, 80% of boxers wouldn't have taken any of those risks to attempt to be great. That's a yes and no. I mean, to say 80% of the boxers wouldn't take a Canelo payday, I don't know about that. But it's a good point, I mean, in a lot of ways. All right. Remember when Postol beat Matisse, who fans wanted Bud to fight, so instead Crawford fights Postol after he KO'd Matisse, and Bud schools Postol. Bud gets no credit because you guys wanted to see a guy that he knocked out, whatever. I mean, to say he didn't get credit, it was the lineal title. I can understand years later now when you look at it and go, well, I mean, you know, that's your best win or whatever. But, I mean, come on. Why would Canelo leave DAZN just to go back on DAZN? Makes no sense. Most likely pay-per-view for his next fight, and most likely not Smith. This was November 11th. It's like, well, Canelo left DAZN, but not totally, because he didn't have a contract with DAZN. And once he found out that it was my own promoter fucking me, then he wasn't as mad at DAZN. I don't know. This is Coppinger just caught up with Oscar De La Hoya. They're going to reschedule Garcia Campbell, most likely December 19th. We'll see. That would be a great co-feature, wouldn't it? Oh, my God, that'd be great. Looks like Ubali has reported to have visa issue and may not be able to travel to the U.S. to defend his bantamweight belt against Donaire. There's talks that it'll be Emmanuel Rodriguez instead. That kind of sucks, man. That kind of sucks a little bit. I think, what else we got here? Oh, by the way, UK fight fans, there's an announcement. Spence and Garcia will be shown on Premier Sports and Box Nation in the UK December 5th. So will Colbert in Arbadella, I think it is, Arboleta, November 28th, and then Ubali Donaire. This was a late text. It appears that they are resurrecting their deal with PBC, whether that's Premier Sports or Box Nation or whatever. So it's just nice that they can watch some stuff over there. This is from Teofimo Lopez. He warns Gervonta not to overprice himself. You are not Mayweather on the A side. Which, come on now, the A side? Come on now, Teo. Dillian White on Alexander Povetkin. I personally don't think he got COVID. I think he just needed more time to get ready because he took a lot of damage in the first fight. He took a lot of damage, took a lot of time off, thought I got stopped. Although I got stopped, I went straight back to training. So he's saying Povetkin is afraid of him and that he's faking COVID. Oh, this is some news, and then we'll get out of here. This is Bob Arum from about 5 days ago, give or take. Inoue and Casemiro need spectators. Won't happen without it. This is from Boxing Scene. I think I said that. He is not bothered. Bob Arum is bothered by the recent comments from bantamweight WBO champ Casemiro, who says, Arum's company was unable to afford unification. The fight was originally scheduled, as we know. But he goes on to say he admits the fight is not doable while the pandemic is raging. So who is going to pay for it without the live gate? I can't afford that. Casemiro or Inoue inside the bubble, I just can't. It's kind of weird, though, because it's like, so you could afford these other fights, but you can't afford, what are they both getting, $5 million or something? They really need spectators who would watch live and pay for the fight at the MGM in Las Vegas to get good revenues. I can't keep doing these fights during the pandemic where I can't get spectators. Although the MGM wants to do the next Inoue fight, they want to bring in tourists and wealthy gamblers from Japan, but we can't do that. And he does have a 2-fight per year deal with them. Maybe that's off now, but I don't think it is. So yeah. I think that's about it. Let's shut this thing down. There's not a ton of great fights on paper. Sometimes we just get spoiled out of nowhere. I mean, we've kind of had a nice run since August, really. A great October and a good chunk of November so far. But long story short, sometimes these fights, these weekends pay off and we just get a great fight out of nowhere. So that's obviously what I'm hoping happens. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Enjoy the fights. Take it easy. Peace.
Once you become the world champion, I believe that you feel you have the upper hand. So now, as you fight, let's say you fight 4 or 5 years of straight survival, the bullshit, the holdback, and when you become the world champion, you're like, you know what, I made it. Now I'm going to show you it's business. So I'm going to get every dollar worth of what I deserve. Why? Because I'm the world champion.